to me, poetry is the narrative. I'm a storyteller at heart. And I want to tell a story that anybody can understand. And if you listen, you're like, oh no, I've had that day. Ooh, I've been there. That is where the art comes to me, is how can I tell a story that explains itself and is solid? And when you hear it, you go, mm-hmm, I feel that. Like, I think some poets are poets for thinkers and others are poets for feelers. And I am here for the feelers of the crowd.
This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. People and Their Poems is presented by Ornog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to People and Their Poems podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Carlson, and I have the thrill today of being in the company of Nadia Sims. She is the Manchester, Connecticut Poet Laureate. She's an incredible presenter. I've had the thrill of watching her wow audiences across the state. And she is the author of 3 collections, A Soft Place to Land, We Know the Dark, and Prophet Interrupted. Thank you for joining me today, Nadia. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. This is very cool.
I am, you know what, I am so excited too. And it's a little conversation we were just having about being a public presence, which is part of what being a poet laureate is, versus let me open the door to my mind and come in if you dare. You know, it's a very different mindset. And I think you are just an absolute master of knowing how to present a poem in a way that brings your audience someplace they had no idea they were going to go. So I would love to talk to you about your inspiration and how you figured out how to do that. That would be really awesome to hear.
I'm excited. Where do you want to start?
Well, how about, what inspired you to be a poet, to write poetry? What got you going?
So I feel like I've been writing poetry my whole life, right? Poetry was kind of how I interpreted the world and how I was feeling. And I'm a big Pisces, grew up in a not so nice home. So I had to put my feelings somewhere. And poetry was the page. And I was that girl in grade school who, you know, they took us on a field trip. We saw Remember the Titans. I wrote a poem about it. And then I'm on the intercom reading my poem about Remember the Titans. But after a while, I stopped performing. I was always writing, but I stopped performing. And it wasn't until COVID that I was like, I want to try performing again. I want to try to do something with my poetry because, you know, it was not a lot of people remember, but COVID was a scary time and a lot of people around me were passing away. And I was like, okay, if this thing gets me and I have to go before God and he's like, what did you do with the gifts I gave you? I need to have an answer. And I feel like I need to at least say, I tried. I tried performing. I tried the whole poetry thing because I had imposter syndrome real bad. I mean, I was like, someone's going to get from the audience and they're going to look at me and they're going to point, she's not a real poet. And that's going to be the end of it all. So I had to teach myself how to be brave, how to take up space, how not to shrink, how not to shake, and just kind of let poetry became my avenue to existing fully and opening me up. And a lot of my poems are about that journey, how to not shrink, how to give myself grace, how it's a lot of my conversations with God and make, okay, how do I justify my existence almost? And a lot of my poems surround existing, just that act on any given moment, on any given day, and the thoughts that I had existing. And a lot of them are kind of like, you know, a little wild, but that's poetry just lets me live out loud.
You know, I remember your event as poet laureate at Real Arts Way when you
Mhm.
invited people around the state to write poems about the art.
That was fun.
Um, and one of the first things you said after you introduced yourself was that this is a safe place
Mhm.
and we don't have to be perfect. and just do your thing. And the tone you set was so inviting for the artists who were there, as well as, well, the poets are artists too. Why do I keep forgetting that, right? I do.
Yeah.
Um, but you created that, so you really, I guess I could argue your case before God a little bit too, that you did give that gift, and and I have remembered that at every public event I've been to since, that you're given the gift of yourself, and it's through the
Mm.
poem, and let that be, and then and that making it okay to be vulnerable. I mean, and that there's such a demand for perfection,
Yes.
flawlessness in our world, and yet, what is that? You know?
I think people are slowly becoming afraid to be caught trying. Like you think you have to be this master or this savant and it has to be polished and you can't stumble or fumble. And that is a lot of pressure. Way too much pressure for me. Way, way, way too much pressure for me. And I feel like the relief and the balm to that is to be caught being imperfect. I stumble, I fumble, I like forget. That's why I don't memorize poems. Woo.
Mhm.
You want to see a poet make a poem up on the spot? Me. Ask me to memorize anything. I'll fake my way through it. And it's such a gift to give someone to say, hey, I'm not requiring that of you. This moment isn't requiring that of you. You get to go up and be human and be a human who does poetry. And I think even as like poet laureates, there's this title, and everyone expects you to have this posture sometimes and, to speak poetry and have this command of the language that is impeccable, when really good poets and good poems are rooted in imperfect moments and imperfections. A lot of like great poems will be like, hey, I got caught being imperfect. Let me tell you what happened. Those are the poems that call to me. Those are the moments that speak to me, and those are the people who impact me the most. Is the people who can say, "Yeah, no, you're gonna catch me being human, and that's okay. And if you want to be human too, we can do this thing together, and we'll survive it." And
And I think that is what I have found to be the magic in your readings,
mm,
the events that you've hosted. It's that humanity, and it elevates the poetry to a different level, and I just think that's amazing, um, that you have that courage to do that. Could I just go back to that school time experience and being on
mhm,
the intercom? Could you
hmm.
just explain how do you go from writing the poem to getting on the intercom? Did you have a teacher who was sympathetic, or how'd you get there?
Sympathy. No, I had showcase teachers. I had teachers who were like, Nadia did a thing. Because I was always doing a thing. I've always been, before it was counted valedictorian, like head of the class, just because like perfection was a thing that was required in my house. But I was also good at school. So I would like, I just sit there, have a poem, and my teacher would go, so what do you have? What did you do? Like I rewrote the How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It was how the Grinch had a brother named the Grouch and how the Grouch saved the Grinch from Christmas. Like I was doing those kind of projects. And I was like, all right, sure, I'll share. Yeah, I was that girl.
Oh, that's great.
I was that girl.
Well, that's cool. Would you I feel like anybody listening right now is going to want to know. So, what are these poems like? Would you mind sharing some of your work with us?
Sure. I have a couple that I could do. So recently life has become very hectic, very interesting. And one of my favorite poems to reflect that is called Don't Forget the Mayo. And it is about having a bad day and going to Walmart. That's the scene. Don't forget the mayo. My mother's potato salad has me in the aisle of the good Walmart. The one where the shelves stay stocked, not the one where the underwear is in a case with a lock, because who knew people like to steal clean drawers? And in this store, they have everything except people who say, excuse me. And I've had to be black all week. So excuse me if my mumbles turn to murmurs, turn to my Samuel L. Jackson stares. I silently dare you to take the last bag of white cheddar puffs. But focus, sis, the mayo. And I'm passing the baby section. The silence of my mother's wish for grandkids hits, and the old argument in my womb begins about how my left ovary is all in, but my right wants no parts. And she ain't liked me since I turned 12, and me and her been beefing ever since. And even though the parts that make me a woman are weak, I've had to be black and a woman all week. So I push forward, refusing to weep. And I thought mayo is usually by the salad dressing. Who designed this store? And at the refrigerated section, comparing prices of meat, and that one's 7 cents cheaper and only a little gray. And I need the extra money. I have to buy my test strips because I've had to be black and a woman and a diabetic all week. And everything has to be no sugar added. But watch out for the Oast brothers, sucralose and fructose, because they be lying and don't taste quite right. Fake sugar on the tip of the tongue feels like a lie, kind of like Kanye on any given Sunday with his hands to the sky. And nonsense and noise have chased me up and down the aisles. And girl, if you forget this mayo, because all week I've had to be black and a woman and a diabetic. And I follow the shade room, and the comments make me want to be single, to torch the earth, and to audition to get abducted by aliens on an expedition, expeditiously in that order. Because who wants to be stuck with people who litter and take away human rights? And all week, I've had to be a human fighting for rights like life and the right to decide, because nowhere did I decide to be black and a woman and a diabetic. And I hope they have Hellmans, because they can go straight to hell, man, if they think I'm paying $8 for dupes. And not to mention the cost. Let's talk about the cost of it all. I'm looking for $5 salmon and all they have is tilapia. And child, don't forget this mayo. They don't sell Miracle Whip here. I only have 18 items. I counted because it's the third, and the people with the food stamps are out in carts overfull with treats, sweets, and goodies I can only dream about, because all week I've had to be black and a woman and a diabetic and middle class. And my check has to be enough to house me and feed me, despite inflation and YouTube thinking I'm about to pay to be ad free. I got 7 seconds all day, and my thumb is quick to skip ads as soon as the button becomes clickable. Like the way I quit men as soon as love becomes quittable. And someone please tell me how I spent $186 when everything was $350 and I only have 18 items. And shoot, I still forgot the mail. Home.
Oh, that is amazing. I was wondering, this is so shallow, but I was wondering which brand of mayonnaise you're going for.
Hellman's? It's Hellman's.
Oh, that a girl. Me too. All right. Well, that is something. And I just, the way you take the current, the politics of life that we live in, and it's your story. And if I may be so bold, I understand white privilege through your poetry, because as a white woman, I don't have to think about being white.
Mm.
And listening to poets, and I don't know if that's about as ignorant as it gets, but I feel like that's the whole thing. I'm not thinking about this.
But
I'm
it's not
thinking
ignorance,
about I
it's
might not like
acknowledgement. It's
things that are going
acknowledgement.
on at Walmart,
Yeah.
etc. But there's that assumption that if this is my world,
Mm.
and that is what poetry has done for me, and your poetry especially, is who has the freedom to forget for even a minute
Mm.
how these circumstances ding our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and box us into a definition not of our making,
Yeah.
and to be in conversation with those definitions and searching for meaning in our own humanity. And it's and you do it in your poems every single time, Nadia. You just make that world our world.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
also, I'm not trying to ever force that to be your world, but to just think about this is how I have to navigate Walmart. And I'm in it and just regular things. I'm just looking at meat and who hasn't gone, ooh, this is 907. Ooh, that's 903. And what does that 4 cents do for me right now? So yeah, like
Yeah, and all those universal, those things that have you forgetting the one thing you go into the store for. and then being in that there's no going back now
And I'm going
situation.
home.
Yeah,
We have
yeah.
potato salad or mashed potatoes now because I'm not doing it. But yeah, that's what I love about poetry is I get to be me and very me. And I'm not, and I think you said ignorant, but to me it's acknowledgement. It's the ability to go, that's not my experience, but wow, is that what you experience? Like, oh, it's a beautiful acknowledgement.
Thank you. It is the gift, one of the many gifts of your poetry is, and the specific details and those things that are universal to all of us, but specific to you
Mhm.
that make your world accessible and really speak to why we need poetry. And when you perform your poetry, um, who are your audiences generally? Do they tend to
Oh,
be poetry people? Do you know? Is there a trend in the crowds who show up, or the people who are listening, or is it eclectic?
yes. To be honest with you, it's not really poetry people. I think I am beginner friendly, or people who I am for people who don't think they like poetry. Um, a lot of times I get approached by people, there's usually of a certain crowd who go, I didn't know that I liked poetry, but I like your poetry. Like I was able to understand it because I am not so interested in the mechanics of poetry, where, a lot of people, and I respect it. I have a great respect for the people who can do formatting and who can do the haikus and the rigid string and like are, poets for the page who do these things mechanically and are mechanically sound and have like, you know, metaphors that I couldn't even think of and are Shakespearean and wonderful and bless your heart. I don't focus on that. To me, poetry is the narrative. I'm a storyteller at heart. And I want to tell a story that anybody can understand. And if you listen, you're like, oh no, I've had that day. Ooh, I've been there. That is where the art comes to me is how can I tell a story that explains itself and is solid? And when you hear it, you go, mm-hmm, I feel that. Like I think some poets are poets for thinkers and others are poets for feelers. And I am here for the feelers of the crowd because how I started performing, I didn't perform for other poets until deep years after I started. I started at open mics. My sister took me to open mics and the ones with like not poetry open mics, not quiet, and we're here to listen to poetry. It was with rappers who had background dancers and lights and music. And it was just me and a piece of paper going, I'm going to do a poem for you, and having to learn how to command attention for a stage that was not meant for me. And I did that 4 or 5 times a night, a week, and going, okay, how do I make you listen to me? How do I make you care? And how do I make you understand me? And that kind of taught me how to be dynamic. Because I was like, you did not come to see somebody read from a page, and I got to make that experience worth something. So here's the journey I'm going to take you on, and you're going to be glad you went, maybe.
Well, you know what? We have a debt of gratitude to your sister then for taking you to those open mics, because it's really interesting how the momentum in your poem picks up and the
Mm.
wordplay, and it starts to take on this momentum, and it is a journey. It is taking us places through the language, and it's amazing. It really is. And I just want to say, I remember you coming out to the wilds of Litchfield, to the Litchfield Community Center in April, because the Litchfield Arts Council wanted to have a poetry event. They do a ton with art in that town, and a lot of good people in that town, but no poetry event. So, the Arts Council wanted to do this, and there you were, and what a receptive audience,
Oh my God.
and I think, that people want to be shaken up in their chairs a little bit, that nobody's going there to be because their Tylenol PM didn't work.
Right.
They want to be awakened, and and alerted to a different way of thinking.
Mhm.
And you do that, and I think there's a strength and a power, but also a gentleness in there that comes through your, it's the human aspect. It's the, I think, the self-respect and the personal experience that makes it accessible,
Mhm.
that made it such a gift to the fine folks of Litchfield. So thank you. You got another one for us?
Sure.
All right.
Sure. This poem is called Soft Blossom. Who planted that seed in you? The one that says you're unattractive, unworthy, undeserving, the weed with opinions on what you'll never have, you'll never do, you won't ever be. Who planted that seed in you? What whisper rises above every affirmation, seeps its way into every prayer, undermines every resolution, and you have tried, girl, you have tried. You have tried so hard to be seen, to dream, to love, to be available, to be present, to be kind, to be soft. I wasn't still until I had to be. I wasn't fast until monsters chased me. Am I a lie? My body is all pillow. I have crevices soft enough to sink into and land softly, but if you squeeze me too hard, if you push too much, if you crash against me, you'll feel the cement. You won't make it past my armor. I chip away at my own walls trying to hear a heartbeat, but when has stone ever made sound? What does it mean to be soft and safe? What does it mean to be open and not exposed, to be vulnerable and not weak, to be fragile and know I'll be handled with care? You see, I have been fumbled, tumbled, tossed, thrown aside, stepped on, and over. So what would it take to let another touch me and hope they don't leave bruises? I have been discarded. Forgive me for flinching when you pick me up. Don't drop me. Open your hands and maybe I'll like being lifted, floating, being supported for once. I have tried so hard to change, to be a new me. Maybe this was my caterpillar phase, and I spent time in my cocoon trying to transform. And now the lights are so bright, and I got to be brave enough to fly when I'm used to crawling. But maybe, if I land gently, if I flutter lightly, I'll kiss a flower that was brave enough to blossom, brave enough to be soft too. Because imagine someone being soft with your hopes, intentional with your destiny, delicate with your past, dancing with your dreams, holding space for your cracks and your chasms, and bringing order to the chaos of your cosmos, being tender with my flesh, gentle with my worldview, teaching me to bend instead of break, to bloom, to blossom, to finally, my God, finally be soft. Home.
Well, there you go again. Oh,
Oh,
oh, there we go. Oh my gosh. Wait, my battery saver. Oh my god. This is a day. This is a
being
day.
human.
Oh my god, we went from the cement and the steel. I wasn't steel until I had to be. What a line. Oh my goodness. To get to that flower metaphor and oh my gosh. you know, deep respect for what you just did there. That and you know how who can't identify? What woman could not identify with that? We
Mhm.
are conditioned to feel inadequate. When does it happen? You
Yeah.
know?
Like, and who did that? Who told you that? Because it's something we believe. It's a belief. But then I also think being soft is a belief. Because like it's one thing to be a flower, but to be treated as a flower is a different experience. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
to be handled as a flower. I've never had that experience. What must that be like?
yeah. It's you know, and I'm thinking of all the ads that come up in my social media. You know,
Mhm.
the GLP-1s, the sagging arms on middle-aged women.
Yeah, and it's like we're fed this. There's this ongoing diatribe of what you aren't. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
And it's like these lines, because I smiled over the years.
right? And I ate
Fine.
great food, and it was delicious. Like, but don't let the soft curves fool you, because I'm not there yet. Like,
It's fascinating. And I remember my mother years ago talking to me about how Sophia Loren decided that she was going to accept herself as she was, this Italian actress who was a sex symbol and beautiful and all this. To hear what you see is what you get, and it's crazy the glamour queens who earn this recognition for self-acceptance because it's so unusual.
yeah, because acceptance is radical. You will get more hate just saying, no, I love who I am. I'm okay with who I am, because it's a radical thing. I don't think we're conditioned to be loving. We're conditioned to be discerning. We're conditioned to be even discriminatory in a way. But to be loving, that's a radical act. And that's why I think poetry is a radical act. Poetry is radical because poetry looks at language and go and ask questions and said, okay, you describe that. Now, poetry requires you to love through language, to take a moment and dissect it, view it, expound upon it. That's love. It's a craft of love. And that's why I think poetry is like one of the most radical forms of literature there is.
I'm with you on that, and I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a woman named Patricia Lee Lewis, and she's spent years leading
Mhm.
poetry workshops, and one of the things she said to me was, we were talking about how you respond to somebody's poem, and this whole idea that, okay, I put my heart on the page, I give it to you, and now you tell me what's wrong with it or how to fix it in a
Right.
second. I have a lot of problems with that. I don't think that's the starting point. And the imagery she used, she said, it's like you have a brand new baby and you
Hmm.
give it to somebody to hold. And they say, thank you for letting me hold your baby, but doesn't he have funny looking ears?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was, and it's so true.
Yeah.
I didn't bleed for this, so you could tell me how to bleed better. And it just
Hmm.
takes that paradigm, and it's really an exquisite thing when people dare
Yeah.
share a poem. And I think, and I think that's the thing about open mics that I think I always say it's like our hope for democracy.
Hmm.
It is us at our best moment when we can listen through somebody else's poem, and might not be the poem we want to hear. It might not be our poem.
Right.
But by God, that complete stranger got up in front of a microphone after working on this piece of who they are to put it out there. Now, how are you receiving that? And how is that a way to build community? And that
Sandy, you are a poet. Oh, that was perfect. A piece of who they are.
and when I listen to you, Nadia, and it's about, thinking about when I go and stand in front of that microphone, people aren't going to just hear words off a piece of paper. How do I make this compelling for you? I think that is the big gift that you give, is you go to that next level um and add that quality to it. As you said, there are some poems for the page and some for the performance, or the social connection, that
Mhm.
really personal interaction in front of a microphone. And I think getting to that place where you can do that
Mhm.
um, is a real art. Can you just talk for a minute about how do you know this is the poem? Because it can be hard. People can absolutely love their poem or actually know it so well
Mhm.
that they feel like this is for the world, and then it's like, nope. So how did you get to play claps? How do you know the poem is ready for a public presentation?
Mhm. Um, so I don't always. There are some you have poems where you write it and you go, okay, yeah, I like this one. Um, and then there are poems you try and you go, never again, never again. And then there are poems you're reading and you edit while reading because your line doesn't go over so well, or there's a joke in there and nobody laughs, and you're like, tough crowd. That happened to me recently because there was a poem I wrote called Biblical Wives that I think is so funny because the idea of like wives in the Bible is so hilarious to me because their husbands are so ridiculous. Like you have Jonah, he comes home, yeah, I was in the belly of a whale for 3 days, honey. Or Noah's Ark, you have a whole farm to work, and he goes, well, God told me to build an ark. Excuse me? Is it drink or is it God? And that question of it could be God is so, but I can't, they're not clicking yet. They're not clicking yet. So I like every now and then I'll put it in a set, I'll peek out in the audience, and then I'll go, okay, it's not there yet. And I'll bring it back. I'll bring it back. And sometimes it's just a word or a line or an inflection. Um, but there are some poems that feel like medicine. And those are the poems you share. Those are the poems that are like I have a poem, A Soft Place to Land. And in there I talk about hindsight. And I go, see, you don't remember. How dare you forget how it felt when there was no sun? There was just a hole. It was just you and a chance to buy a little time, take a few breaths, stay with the devil so you wouldn't be by yourself. Tell hindsight to mind its business because it wasn't there. Because people forget hindsight wasn't in the room. And that poems like that feel like medicine, that take you outside of the moment and go, huh, those are the ones you share. Because those are the ones that hurt. Those are the ones that almost hurt to write because you have to take a piece of yourself from out of the microscope and put it on the page and go, here I am on display. Because I too had a moment that I'm not quite proud of, but I survived it. I'm not here to shame you for it. We're not exchanging high fives, but we're exchanging the acknowledgement that we needed medicine. Maybe we were sick. Here's a little bit of grace for us both. I love those poems that provide a little grace, that look at a moment and go, yeah, we were not at our best. But didn't we survive it? Those are the ones I like to share.
Well, thank you, Nadia. And that takes courage to do, right? I mean, and it's funny, the whole, like you said, the expectations of poets laureate, like what, you're perfect, you have the right cardigans in your closet, what do you got,
Uh,
and and it isn't just clever or whatever, that there's that true humanity that comes through, that creates the opportunities for people to
yeah,
um, um, look at themselves or feel differently about themselves or think they can get to that better place through
yeah.
the honesty that you invite through your amazing poetry.
I if I have a job as a poet, I think my only job is to help people write anyway. Because I feel like they're waiting for perfection, they're waiting for permission, they're waiting for stages, or they're waiting. Don't wait. Write anyway. Write scared, write small, write ashamed, write anyway. You can always get better. But write, because I think we're being erased and we're not being seen and we're shrinking and we're disappearing from pages and we're disappearing from stories and we're disappearing from narratives. Put yourself on the page. And then I promise you, there will always be at least one person who goes, oh, I see myself. There I am. That is my job, to give space and opportunity for a person to go, oh, there I am. I'm not alone.
I think the idea of not being alone is also very radical. If we feel isolated, which
Mhm.
is a legacy of COVID, I mean, And I think that was what was so traumatizing for so many people that, he tried to overcome it through screens, but that sense of isolation, it makes us more vulnerable and less aware that there are people who are feeling what we're feeling, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I just have another little question for you. I think you've kind of addressed it, but what would you say is the most significant thing you learned about yourself through the whole journey of writing poetry and being a poet?
I learned that I love me. I learned that like all the things that I thought I hated, all the things that people couldn't really find or love were just a part of my testimony. And I like me. I think I'm funny. I think there's sometimes I read a poem, I'll go, oh girl, you're kind of talented. Like I you, you like you read your collection back, you're editing, you're like, okay, this is got a little gift. You're okay. I learned that like there's nothing wrong with who I am. There are things I want to work on, but there's nothing wrong with me. It's just that I had to find the right vehicle to be who I am because all the things that I thought were problems made really good poems. And they're turning me into a poet that's kind of good too, you know? So it's like poetry freed me to kind of like myself and love myself and want to be with myself on pages and stages. And that's been the greatest gift, literally the greatest gift of my life was letting poetry let me live out loud.
Well, that's amazing, and the joy and that love definitely emanate from you. Period. Whether it's at a poetry event or just you being right there on the screen or in person. So, as your lawyer before God, we got a lot of evidence that you've.
Listen, I'm gonna be like, look, I tried, I did this, I was outside.
That's funny. Oh, and what would your advice be for that person who's maybe just never tried, doesn't think they have a stage presence or could even develop one?
I'd say go write a poem. Don't even worry about perfecting it. Write a poem. Go to an open mic, not a loud one. You don't have to trial through fire. Just give yourself the gift of sharing a poem out loud. And there are a lot of safe spaces to do that. There is nothing like creating something and sharing it and having that moment. That is a gift of just being brave enough to stand flat-footed and deliver something that you put your heart on, that piece of yourself. And then it might be an addictive feeling, and I hope it is. But if not, you can at least say, I did that thing. I did that one thing. I did that one poem. And that is a gift that doesn't go away. That's a feeling that doesn't go away, of having been brave enough to be on the stage and share a part of yourself. So if you can, write a poem and then go to an open mic where you can be heard and let yourself be witnessed.
Thanks, Nadia. Thank you so much. And the podcast notes, everything's going to have links to your books, how to get them, and I really do appreciate your taking the time to talk with me today and to share that joy. You just absolutely elevated my day. I'm very, very grateful.
Thanks, Sandy. I had a blast. Chatting with you. I really did. So
I have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
This has been People and Their Poems, presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about this episode. Visit oronogmountainpublishing.com for more information about our services and writing opportunities. And visit peopleandtheirpoems.net to learn more about the podcast.